They came at dawn with tanks, flamethrowers, and rifles. What they found waiting for them wasn't an army, but a ghetto full of the starving, the hunted, and the already condemned. In April 1943, Nazi troops entered the Warsaw Ghetto to carry out the final liquidation. They expected passive lines of prisoners, a few days of rounding up stragglers, maybe some resistance. Instead, they were met with fire. From rooftops and windows, Jewish fighters opened fire with pistols, grenades, and Molotov cocktails. German soldiers fell screaming into the streets. Barricades rose from the rubble. The ghetto had made its choice. 4 years earlier, over 400,000 Jews had been sealed behind brick walls in a few cramped city blocks. Starvation rations, disease, deportation. Entire families disappeared into the night. Most never returned. By 1942, nearly everyone who remained had watched loved ones board trains to Treblinka. The Nazis called it resettlement. But rumors had become knowledge. The truth had arrived in whispers, in letters smuggled back, in blood-stained coats returned with no explanation. The people left inside the ghetto, young, sick, elderly, were no longer waiting to be saved. They knew no one was coming, so they decided to die on their feet. The Jewish Combat Organization formed in secret. A few hundred fighters, many teenagers, armed with smuggled pistols, home-built explosives, stolen rifles, and a handful of revolvers. They dug bunkers, built tunnels, studied maps, some trained with nothing more than knives and fury. On April 19th, the eve of Passover, German troops pushed into the ghetto. They were met with coordinated gunfire and explosives hurled from rooftops. Resistance fighters emerged from alleys, then vanished into smoke. German tanks were attacked with gasoline bombs and roadblocks of rubble. The Nazis were stunned. For the first time in occupied Europe, an entire Jewish district was fighting back. Reinforcements were sent, flamethrowers, artillery, more tanks. The Nazis began setting entire buildings ablaze, flushing out fighters and civilians alike. The fire spread block by block. Smoke blanketed the city. The screams of the dying echoed down the sewers. Still, the resistance fought. A 14-year-old boy held a stairwell with a single pistol. A girl in a red scarf lit explosives in a basement and vanished before the soldiers could react. Fighters stayed underground for days without food or water, dragging wounded comrades through tunnels just wide enough for a single body to crawl. The world outside heard little. Warsaw itself, just on the other side of the wall, watched as the flames turned the sky black. No one intervened. The uprising was never meant to win. It was meant to exist. By early May, the ghetto was ash and ruin. The Germans found the main bunker on Mila 18. Dozens of fighters were holed up inside. When the end came, many took their own lives. Their leader, Mordecai Anielewicz, was 24 years old. He had fought until he couldn't anymore, and chose his own end. On May 16th, the Germans detonated the Great Synagogue of Warsaw. Smoke rose from the rubble, curling above a city that had stood by. SS Commander Jürgen Stroop reported, "The Jewish quarter of Warsaw no longer exists, but it did. In memory, in defiance, in the names shouted as the flames closed in the brief, burning hope that even a doomed fight could still matter." Less than 1,000 fighters had resisted one of the most powerful armies in the world for nearly a month. Most of them died. A few escaped. Some survived by hiding under the ruins for weeks before slipping through the sewers to the Aryan side. Their names weren't in the papers. They didn't get medals. But they changed the meaning of resistance. They were untrained, outgunned, forgotten by allies. But they stood. And in doing so, they proved that silence is not the only response to terror. Sometimes, even with no chance of survival, the right thing is to fight. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war.